You you work with some of the most high performing individuals, from athletes, ex special ops forces.
Hmm.
But I think we should start. What was the moment that you first cracked yourself open to lead you to the work that you do?
Oh, what a question. I love that. Um, uh, what cracked me open was my burnout, and it humbled my ass because I was doing a really great job of ignoring everything until that moment. I was doing a really good job of just keeping really busy, of being a human doing rather than a human being, and kind of tricking or just trying to fight the need to face what was really going on inside of me. And I was honestly, I felt like I was holding it down really well until my burnout went, nah, and I got my ass served back to me on a plate. And that was humbling, quite frightening when you've been quite unwell and you don't know why, and you suddenly feel really out of control of things, and you're just trying to find solutions. At the time, I was trying to hide a lot of symptoms as well and just trying to push on and keep going. So I was also trying to ignore my own burnout. Brilliant, classic me. I was trying to like fight what was really happening. And so that was the moment that I was like, okay, I'll do anything to not feel like this. And that was when I had a coaching session. And this is like 15 years ago now, maybe 16 years ago. So it was quite unusual. Like coaching was not a cool thing like it is now. I thought it was a bit weird and hippie and like, what's the point of it? It was not a flex, certainly. And it was kind of the era still that, you didn't really talk about mental health. Like you sort of hid it and, keep calm and carry on being all British or what have you. It was sort of perceived still to be a bit of a weakness that we hid. And I worked in a very male dominated industry as well. I worked in the construction industry, so even more, not blaming the guys, bless them. I think they had it worse than me because you didn't even share that quite the sort of toxic masculinity culture. But
Mm.
that was my moment because it was just okay, everything that I've got in my toolkit isn't working. It's not even touching the sides. And I had this visualization with a friend of mine who was a coach, and it connected me into something that I'd never experienced before. Like I'd maybe had a little tiny taste of it in, say, like the Shavasana at the end of a yoga class, like a little, like, oh, that felt a bit gooey and nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, but this really took me out of the noise of my mind. It took me into my soul. Obviously it's my subconscious, but it took me into that place, and I'd never really been there before. And then when I had a taste of that, I was like, oh my God, this is it. I just want to my type A brain was like, you have to understand everything about this place. So like kind of really went all in on the coaching. But that to me was the moment that, yeah, things blew up and I couldn't fight it in the way I normally would. And through that process was how I ended up kind of on this path.
When you say you couldn't fight it anymore, what did that look like?
So honestly, I was willing for there to be a sort of off the shelf solution. Like, so I went for like intolerance tests, and I was thinking, oh, maybe because one of the symptoms, it looked like IBS. One of the symptoms seemed to be sort of IBS of burnout for me. And then like the associated brain fog or like energy dips and things like that. And so I thought, okay, well, if I've got IBS, it's probably a food intolerance. So I went off to like a nice spa and I went to some really shishi place in London to get myself tested, thinking, honestly, kind of wishing it would be gluten because then I could carry on and just not have gluten.
Yeah.
And I say this quite a lot, but I wasn't intolerant to gluten. I was intolerant to my life. And I
Oh,
knew that. But yeah,
oh. I
yeah.
don't know how many
But
other people are like that.
but I didn't want it to be the answer. I knew what the answer was. And that's the other thing I think with like shame and the work that I do here. I think most of us, people are like, how do we know if we've got shame? I'm like, let me tell you, you know if you have shame. Like, we don't struggle to feel shame, but we
To
don't want
hide it.
to. Yeah, exactly. You want to
Yeah.
do anything but feel it. And also, you don't want other people to see it because you feel
Yeah.
ashamed of your shame. So
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
me, yeah, I knew that this wasn't sustainable. I knew that what it meant was changing probably my career, maybe my relationship, but I didn't feel equipped to handle that level of truth. I didn't feel ready or able to go anywhere near what I now know is my healing.
Mm.
And I had to, because it wasn't a food group that I had to cut out. It was, I had to make systemic changes in my life, to completely sort of now be in what I really believe is the role of my soul, doing this now instead. And sure enough, like I have no, food issues or any oysters, no one feeding me one of them, but like, yeah, I have no issues or anything like that. And I'm happier and healthier than I ever have been. And this is 16 years later. I'm way more healthy. So that was what it was. I was pushing away what I felt I wasn't able or ready to process, but deeply inside I knew.
When you say you knew what it was deeply inside you, what was it?
So I had gone into a career that had made me in inverted commas very successful. I'd done very well. So I had a good reputation. I had really lovely clients. I'd built up this network and it was very niche. It was very, very niche. So within sort of London, I was known as the person. And I, at that time, felt very unhappy, very unhealthy, very unwell. But also I felt like I could never replicate that. It's almost like, well, I've put all of my time and energy and effort and education and into this. So how can I just walk away? I lose it all. I can't just start again. And then during this coaching session with my amazing friend Nikki, she was like, but you don't lose it all. You don't lose it all. You don't start from the beginning again. And that was such a, honestly, like a beacon of hope, because I'd been unhappy in this place for a long time, but I hadn't felt there was another sustainable option. And then as part of that, and as part of the sort of the healing and the undoing for myself, I had repressed a lot of my femininity and a lot of my vulnerability to cope. So I put layers and layers and layers of armor on. Like, you would never have seen me cry at work, no matter how broken I was. You would never have seen me, I went through some appalling things during that time. Like, this is before Me Too, and a lot of awful, awful things happened. And I kind of swallowed it all down with a big teaspoon of shame to make sure it stayed in there, because it must be me that's wrong, and going along with that. And then through unpicking this, when my body sort of humbled me and then, needed to go onto this path, being called onto this path, I also had a time to look at my childhood trauma, which was that I'd had a very, very violent childhood. My father was very violent. My mother colluded, which meant that I had no safe person in my family of origin or growing up. I was not safe because my mother was going to take my father's side, blame me, tell me it was me that was wrong. That added to my shame. And what I'd done was I was trying to make myself safe financially. I had pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed to mean I never had to go back there. That was my goal. Make it work, 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 earn, 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 get as high as you can, as fast as you can, and then you'll be safe. Then you'll be able to relax. And of course, financially, maybe I was there, but I didn't feel safe or relaxed. I was in this place that was just, like I say, totally out of alignment with me. And then that's when I found myself sort of going into this, being forced, but I'm very grateful for it, onto this path of really finding out who I am and also, what I believe to be my purpose in this world.
Do you feel like everyone has a purpose that they can search for?
Yeah, I do. I do. And I don't think it has to be what your job or your life's work is. I think there's a lot of pressure on us to do that. I think a purpose can be, I'm just thinking about a client of mine who's amazing, really successful, massive job in a creative industry. And she came on one of my retreats recently, and she just says she's just so drawn to helping and nurturing children, which is sort of the antithesis of her job, which is very much like, maybe big baby artists in the music industry. But she just feels so drawn to that. And that brings joy to her in every occasion. I think that we have to be honoring our purpose in parts of our life, but that can be being a caregiver. Absolutely. That can be having a garden of yours that brings you joy every day. I think that there's this big pressure, and with my burnout as well, I know a lot of this will be resonating. I saw you nodding when I'm talking about it, so it's resonating with you. Yeah. And the thing is, if somebody, when I was in that moment, gave me a golden envelope and went, Annalie, listen, this is your purpose, and you follow this and you will be as successful. In fact, babe, you're going to be more successful than you've ever been here, and you're going to be happy every day and healthy and have a great life. I mean, I would have snatched that thing up, but that's not how it works. If only we had that. And you can work with coaches to help you kind of connect back into some of your essence. But the only thing I think people need to find in this moment, if what we're saying is resonating with them, is find something that gives you a sense of your own essence, your own unapologetic self back, your own aliveness, and put a toe into that. That's fine. And maybe it is a creative pursuit that doesn't, you feel like it isn't giving you anything back, but maybe it's giving you back a little bit of your soul. And then, that can be introducing you to a course where you meet someone where, that's how these stories and things come about. So you don't have to have the whole answer. And I think that plays into procrastination sometimes. It's like we feel like it has to be perfect, but I can't leave this until I have the perfect solution. I
Yeah.
can't leave this relationship until I know that I've tried everything or whatever else, like, no, if it's not working for you, it's not working for you, and that's okay. And it's also okay to try a few different things and try on a few different things. You don't need to have this, like, what are you going to do instead? What are you going to do instead? I don't know. I actually don't know right now. But the thing I'm going to start with is this. Like,
Mm.
I actually don't have so I'm going to leave my job, my big job that I did my MBA for and everything else with all the big titles and the lovely gold embossed business cards, like I'm in American Psycho, and the Range Rover on the drive, literally the Range Rover on the drive. Like, what are you going to do? I don't know. But what I do know is I can't keep doing this because this is eating away at me inside. So I'm just going to start by doing whatever I can in this moment financially. I'm not deluded. People like, I'm not saying, a lot of people are like, follow your passion, fuck it. Like, I've got a mortgage to pay. I'm a single parent, like, yes, do that. But also, I had to keep doing my previous role while I was training in the coaching. I used my holiday time and other things. All I knew was I had to try and change something. So that's sort of what I want to say to people listening is, if you feel a call for a change, it doesn't have to be all in. Sometimes that is a bit too scary or just not realistic. But just finding and creating intentional space to start honoring this or taking a step, the next one then appears. It's true. The path starts to illuminate and then it becomes clearer and clearer.
You mentioned earlier about not being aligned with something. How do I know if I'm truly not aligned with it, or I just need to shift identities?
Ooh, I love that. So one way, a little sort of method you can use, is this something you feel you should be doing, or is it something you want to be doing? Because should is the like language of the inner critic. That's our little evil saboteur that's like, you should call your parents more, or you should tidy your house up, or you should go and check in with those friends or whatever. Typically speaking, a should, if you listen to them or you list them down, because my God, it's a long list. If you take some time to list down your shoulds, I always say should be a swear word. We all have a great big pile of shoulding all over us, like literally. Typically speaking, the shoulds are for other people. So I should be a better student. I should be grateful for this job. My parents put me through law school. I should try harder. I should be happier. I should be more grateful. That's usually shoulding is external. So one way of doing it is to should, like, and see where you're shoulding all over yourself. And then it's a very,
Right now, I'm like, what are my shoulds?
yeah, honestly, there are going
Right.
to be so many. Like, I mean, we're talking today on the school holidays for my daughter, who's very happy upstairs with the cat, but maybe I should have planned back-to-back activities today with her, like rather than me just looking outside and going, actually, we're having quite a lovely day today in the UK and we're going to just be a bit spontaneous and have some joy in our day. But maybe I should have done that for her.
Yeah.
There's a ton of shoulds that we always have, but they're usually related to other people. The energy of want is so different. And I think particularly as women, and I write about this extensively in the book, I think we are told so early to question our own essence, our true nature. We're told to be good, we're told to be polite, we're told to colour within the lines, we're told to, we're not encouraged to have messy emotions or things that, if you burst into tears, the first thing you're probably going to say to me is sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Even for being emotional, we apologize, which is why the book's called Unapologetic. Sorry has become a part of our language to excuse ourselves in the most sort of, like I say, mundane, like, we excuse, oh, sorry, can I just, oh, sorry, do you mind if, oh, Ashleen, sorry, like, can I, just, we say sorry before we introduce ourselves most of the time. Even sorry, my apology is the first thing you're going to see from me. And I feel like this is something as well that plays into this shoulding, because I'm taught to sort of not trust myself or my needs or my wants, or I'm too much. That's the other thing. I don't want you to think I'm too much. But yet,
Yeah.
No one ever told us what too much is. And if I said to you, can you think of someone that's too much? Both of us can be like, oh yeah, she's a bit much. But then that's us not cheering for another woman that the patriarchy has probably given us the narrative of is too much, and no one ever gave us like a benchmark. So we have this push and pull between, I want to achieve my goals, I want to be purposeful, I want to be whatever that might mean for me, and then I'm afraid of taking from you, me being rejected, maybe you'll tear me down, or worse, I hurt you by shining my light, I take from you, and then I'm afraid of being too much, and then I'm ending in this paralysis again. So this all feeds into shoulds. You know, by me being a good friend to you, maybe I feel I have to be smaller or dimmer. I had a client in yesterday who, in her mid-late 40s, I hear this a lot, I'm 44 in a couple of months, and it's happened to me. She has been really unwell, bless her, like really, really unwell, and then is coming out the other side of it. But she's a single friend, child-free by choice, single, always went to the friend's house with the kids, always attended the birthday parties, always did that, has been really, really physically poorly, and financially it's massively impacted her job, everything else. And the friends not only didn't come and see her, but they've criticised her being absent and from them. And then there's this, and she was saying yesterday, you know, maybe because she did something for herself, a project for herself that was quite bold and was her calling of her soul, and has been deeply criticised for that. Oh, we didn't think you were like this. Oh, I didn't know you. So again, we're taken back into this fear of being too much, this constant like push pull. So I think when you get into the energy of want, the list is shorter, the energy is softer, the voice might be a lot quieter, might have to do something like a meditation or whatever works for you, to kind of a beautiful walk in somewhere that inspires you to really get into actually in the stillness, away from the noise of other people. What is it that I want? And if you can't get hold of what is it that I want, another way that I frame it is what would give me the most pleasure in this moment.
Oh,
So
that's interesting.
yeah, because sometimes
Why
what do I
pleasure?
want? Yeah, sometimes what do I want is a bit triggering or a bit difficult, because you can feel overwhelmed by what do I want. What would give me the most pleasure? Making a coffee, turning my phone off, sitting outside in the little bars of sunshine we're getting in the UK, and enjoying every sip of it for 10 minutes in peace. Going for a walk with my daughter, collecting flowers, and making up a game where we go to a beautiful park nearby us. And again, just being completely present with her. Both of us doing like a little spa. I'm giving you some stuff with her because it's holidays today. Doing a little spa evening with her tonight, and getting into my bed and cuddled up and watching a funny Adam Sandler movie that makes her laugh. Like that is going to give me absolute pleasure today. You know, maybe I need to, whatever, do something self-care for me. But yeah, what is going to, and pleasure, that energy, slow, soft, usually a bit quieter. Maybe it is going out with friends and, you know, having a belly laugh that is guttural and kind of resets our system in that way, in a deep connection. But that is a very different inquiry. And let me tell you, that list is so different to the shoulds.
It's interesting hearing you say that, because as you were talking, I'm like, oh, what are my shoulds? And then it switched to want, and you're right. Me growing up being asked that question, what do you want to be? Was like such a deeply, it just used to shut me down as a teenager,
Mm.
because I didn't know. Because in terms of school, I was terrible. So they're like, what do you want to do? Don't know, because I'm terrible at everything in the classroom base, right? But hearing you say pleasure, it's like, oh, I could get on board with that. Like, it sounds much more exciting and much more enticing than what do you want?
Yeah. And even if it just acts as like a little pause. And by the way, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry that you've taken on that belief that you were terrible at school, because that's shame. I was terrible. That's shame that you were given and told that you were terrible at school, which is not true. That's not yours to have. There may be some areas that you struggled. There may be some things that you, frankly, what I'm hearing is maybe we're not adequately supported in your needs. But the fact that you were shamed to the point that now you're saying it to me that you were terrible, which I know isn't true, that it means that you were unsupported instead. Yeah, I feel and I hear the shame in that you were given, and shame is something that's never ours, but we hold on to it.
Thank you. I don't want to cry on the podcast. That would be really awkward. But you just hit the nail on the head. Unsupported. I think I just didn't know how to learn in a classroom. Like the concept of trying to learn even like say a math problem, just I couldn't get it. But if you took me outside and said like fix this with your hands, on that. And it was
Yeah.
like such a easy process. Like woodwork, metalwork, I was on that because I knew what to do. Art, use my hands, easy. But put me in a classroom and ask me to work out a math or learn science, couldn't do it. Just
Yeah, and you were shamed for that rather than being supported or having someone to look at the methods that would help you to learn. You were
yes.
shamed. And I have so many clients, a lot of men actually, that I see who were late diagnosis dyslexia, who were made to read at the front of the class and couldn't do it, and teachers knew, and they would shame them. They would wait for like their turn reading from the book, religious schools, reading from the book, and then the teacher, a grown adult, would be mocking a 7 or 8 year old child for not being able to get the words out. And to me, that is one of the worst kinds of cruelty that I hear. And then it manifests into not using your voice. And then it's a very real thing that you described as well when someone says, "What do you want?" And we go, like dating. What do you want? Where do you want to go? I don't know because I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't know because I get things wrong, because I can't explain things, because I can't do something well. So I don't know. I'll do what you want. Whatever you want. I'll go where you want. You pick, you decide, because I don't know, because I am wrong.
Yes.
And that is what we internalize. And so we not even delegate, we kind of abdicate to someone else and go, okay, you decide for me because I'm wrong. And, I'm told that me being me is not okay. So given that I know that, I will either try and be like a chameleon and, copy/follow you. I write about this in the book as well, but having gone so deeply into shame, I'm so certain now that people pleasing, where again we shame ourselves for that. Oh, why didn't I say no to them? Why did I agree to do that again? When they were being really forceful with me, why didn't I stand up for myself? Or worse, people are like, why didn't you stand up for yourself? And you're like we go into the trauma responses when we're faced in these situations, and people are like, oh, it's ridiculous. They only asked you what you wanted. You're like, you don't understand that those situations for me in the past could have become conflict based situations, or I had felt deeply ashamed, publicly shamed and humiliated. I've taken on humiliation from that time, like you saying you were bad at school when you were not. You were unsupported and made to feel ashamed, and nobody came in and took that away from you because it was never yours to have. And instead then we're in situations that are annoyingly repetitive throughout our life. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And we say something, sometimes people go no. Or my favorite is, oh, I had one quite recently, and it took me back about 1,000 years with this group of people that were interviewing me, or supposedly presenting to me, sorry, to get me onto their books for a speaking agency. And they were like, basically, absolutely love what you do, really want you to be yourself, but not like that. And then just went through this whole thing about how, like, I couldn't talk about this and I couldn't do this and I couldn't do that. And I was sat there thinking, this can't be real. This can't be real. Like, this has got to be a bit of a joke. And, you've literally, all of my socials and everything. And we're having this meeting because of who I am and what I do. And you're basically saying to me, not to talk about this, not to talk about sex, not to talk about pleasure, not to talk about trauma, not to talk about shame, not to talk about any of the things that I like so passionately advocate for. And I was
Basically
just
your
like,
business.
oh my God, me, everything about me. Be yourself, but not like that. And that's what I actually wrote a newsletter on the back of it, and I had so many people reply to it, and I was just like, this is just insane. And this is what I think we're given. And you were given that in school. No, be yourself, be a really good student, do it this way, but not like that. Like you said, you could do it with your hands, with art, with vision. I'm very visual. Like, so yeah, that's great. But you still have to do it like them. And if you don't, you're the failure. And this whole what do you want thing, like we get into this people pleasing because we don't want to feel like that again. I don't want to be in a position where I'm ashamed for not having an answer. You don't want to be put in a position where you feel humiliated because you're unable to do something like other people. So you probably avoid certain situations or try and mask or people please or pretend in other situations so we don't end up in that place of conflict. And that's where shame and trauma come in. We're people pleasing because we don't want it to go too far. I don't want to have to elicit a trauma response. I don't want to find myself in fight, flight, freeze, flop or fawn, which I do often. I'm placating, I'm people pleasing, I'm even sometimes supporting someone that is perpetuating pain because I don't want this to go a level further. You know, when someone turns nasty, say. So I'm going to start people pleasing and fawning, which might look really insane because I don't want it to escalate to the next level. And I feel like we have so much of that, and yet no one is really either putting it together or taking a stand for it in that way. And so I'm really glad that you and I are having this conversation today, because I feel like too many of us are walking around thinking we're the ones, that we're wrong, that we're broken, that there's something wrong with me. And like, I just want to say to you personally, and also to anyone else that might be listening, like, I used to have a life full of shame. Like, I was shameful. And I used to self-harm. I used to scratch at my face till it bled. I did habitual skin picking twice a day in the shower. It was like a subconscious behavior. Anyone who's ever self-harmed, it was a release of stress. And I never felt the pain. I just felt release of stress, particularly active during the breakdown of my marriage. I write about this very openly in the book. And it wasn't until I really got into this work around shame and understood that I'd been carrying this belief that I was bad for so long because of my parents telling me that. And then that being revalidated in things like the workplace when I felt or knew something was wrong, but I was being told that I was the one that was wrong all the time. And, you know, there are these situations that can really effectively activate that wound again for me, or that limiting belief. And mine was, I am bad. I really believe that. My parents told me that. I made my father do these things to me, these violent things, because I was bad. My mother had to support my father because I was so bad. My God, I must be so bad because these two people put on this earth to love me. I must be so awful that they can't even like me. I am bad. And then I chose relationships, probably didn't take on challenges or whatever according to this belief. I masked, I pretended, I didn't show up in probably some friendships because I wanted to be good. I wanted to be the good girl. I wanted to go all in and give away all of myself to help and support other people with no boundaries because I'm bad. So the best thing I can do is try and really, really help other people to show how good I am, my good nature. And when I got hold of shame by its roots, my shame, and got that out of my system with EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is a technique that I work on with my therapist, that was the point I realized that was never mine. That's why I say to you, it was never yours. It's not yours. And I really don't want you to have it anymore. And the fact that I can see it and it's made you feel emotional, like I really don't want for you to have or hold that belief for yourself anymore. And there is a cure for shame. And the cure for shame is self-compassion. And it's harder to give ourselves compassion, which is why I'm able to see and witness you right now. It's easy for you to listen to my story and go, fuck, that's really awful. She seems really nice. I wish that hadn't happened to you. But it's harder for you to turn that lens on yourself. And that's why I keep a picture of my daughter in my office when she was about 6. And I say to people, look at that kid and you tell me if they deserve to be told that they were wrong or bad at school because she couldn't get it, that a grown adult my age told a kid that she was stupid or she couldn't get it or made her feel bad. That is never on you. That is on them. Shame on them, not on you.
It's interesting hearing you talk right now because I think we're mirroring each other in some aspects. The that was my message growing up as well, that I was the problem. So I, in some ways, that's what I carried. You're the problem. So it became such a perpetual thing in my life where I would assume responsibility for everything and anyone, regardless of, like, they probably didn't even have anything to do with me, but I would take it to the extreme that I would make everything my responsibility. And if something happened, it would be my fault. I was the problem. So even if a breakdown of let's say a friendship that just generically died over time or boundaries had to be enforced either on sides, I saw it as I'm the problem. There's something that I did. So yeah, like it's just a perpetual shame loop.
Yeah, it's amazing what we take on. I'm just thinking again to this client I had yesterday because she was sat here. She's been so unwell, bless her. It was one of the first times she's been able to leave the house to come to this session with me. And she was saying, well, maybe it is me because it seems that these two friends that I've known forever, that it's both kind of coming to a head right now, so it must be me. And I was like, I said, maybe I haven't got full context, but simply no. A stranger would step in. I would step in to help you. This just feels, but automatically, and obviously went into childhood. Automatically, it was her that would take on the responsibility and the blame, exactly like you, just without even questioning it. Of course I was wrong. Of course I am bad. Her underlying limiting belief was I am stupid and wrong. And she was shamed by her father when a couple of times. There's one time that she said she felt really lovely when she was having a school photo taken. She felt like she had a really nice outfit, and he shamed her. Oh, I bet you think you look really nice, don't you? Tiny, about 3.5. And then another time that she was picked to do an activity. You put your hand up, and she was one of the people that was picked, and felt like so special that she was picked out of a crowd. And again, oh, I bet you loved that attention, didn't you? I am stupid and wrong. And then she said you could see a difference, heartbreaking, in the photographs of her from when she was this happy, smiley kid. And then it shifted after that to this child that looks nervous and is trying to hide within herself and just questioning, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? Am I doing this wrong again? Because I don't have the context for what's meant to be right. And again, that is a grown adult placing their shame that they were never going to heal and using that to control and limit the essence of a child. Like, that shame is not for us.
How does shame then subtly show up in high performers?
Oh, that's a really good question. So very often it shows up at the point that we become very successful. So usually I've sort of worked out this hypothesis that success can make us conservative. So when you're a bit younger and anything you're doing, you're hunting, you're yeah, I want their job. And it makes sense, right? We're probably in a house share or living with our parents, or, we haven't got loads of responsibilities, right? And then you get to this place. Let me use some of the golfers I work with. So I've worked with PGA golfers and European Tour golfers, things like that. So you then get to a place where maybe you have got a nice house and perhaps you're helping some family members out, and you've got some responsibilities, and you've got a sponsor who you've got to kind of perform for because you want to, your agent, you've got an agent who's you've got to make sure you make the cut because you've got to keep this sponsor happy, or we've got this other sponsor who's really keen, and you looking around, and again, people think that sports is really glamorous, and it is fun, but every single person can see what you earn. It's online. And that's actually not what you earn. That's what is paid in, that then an agent takes a cut from. You have to pay for your travel, a caddy's travel, something else. You've got, you've got tax, you've got everything. People look at a number and go, wow, you've got all of that, and they get to see it. So all of including your success, if you get 0 that week, because you didn't make the cut, people get to see that as well. You don't get to hide and go, oh, I had a bad day at the office and whatever. So it's very, very public. So where it steps in, the shame, is often when people become very successful, like I say, and then instead of hunting that energy of I'm chasing you, I want your position, like I say, you kind of, maybe you've got less responsibility, but you're in that hunting, that chasing mode. What happens is we get into this cling. We get into this, I have to be safe. I can't lose what I've got. I don't want to lose the lead. I don't want to lose my sponsorship. I don't want to lose this position. And then that is a very different energy. If you're trying to play a competitive, highly elite game, you've got to be a risk taker. It's got to seem very risky. You've got to be able to stay in the fire, basically, the whole time in huge discomfort. On the golf course, you'll be playing with someone, they get a gust of wind that helps the shot, you don't. And that is, Mother Nature and the environment. You have to be able to fight your mind, which is trying to take you off track at every minute. And shame is in there going, yeah, you never deserved that. Let's say the underlying limiting belief is you're stupid and wrong. Quite a few of my players would have struggled with dyslexia. It's not uncommon to then have your brain balances out into creativity or sport, or again with yourself, because you weren't supported in school and you were ashamed at school. You're going to try and put all of your effort into something else where you are validated, or at least good at that. People are telling you, well, you're good at that, so you should do that, whether you wanted that to be your career or not. But, well, I was bad at that. Apparently I'm bad, so I better do this thing I'm supposedly quite good at. And then you find yourself in this position where like I say, it's this, all these fears start coming up. Well, if you were terrible at school, you can't do anything else. You've got this, these people are relying on you, the world's watching you, everyone knows that you used to be like this, you had some success, and that is such a different energy, and it gets into your head. So that's where it can show up.
It's interesting that it stems in the success arena as opposed to the startup or a failure.
Yeah, I don't think it does. I think it's different energy, and people don't really see it. Or maybe, you know, we kind of go, well, the expectation isn't there. You've all got a little bit of "I'll prove you wrong" vibe going on, you know. But when you're
That's true.
successful, you're probably more prominent in whatever aspect. You know, you're suddenly, this company is doing well. You're this. The universal thing that I work on, whether it's a corporate athlete, the top of their game in some of the biggest hedge funds or banks, through to the elite athletes, you know, not the special forces, anyone that's a military veteran is so humble. And, you know, just like they just don't, they worry more about others. I think because of the team aspect, it's always more about impact on another. The, the thing that's like really uniting is this imposter syndrome. They get to a place of success and they go, this, I just feel like this could be taken away from me any second. I feel like I don't deserve it. And then what they start doing is sabotaging. They start sabotaging in some ways. So it will be maybe drugs and alcohol. It will be maybe gambling. It will be, possibly. There's usually somewhere where, or even just simply, you know, the things that you should be doing to best prepare that you would have done in the past, and then not finding the time for that. You know, it's almost this, oh, I didn't have time to do that today. I didn't have time to do these drills. I didn't have time to, not finding the time, traveling, you know, traveling later and later to a tournament, like almost the inevitability of I'm not going to make it.
It's very interesting. Would that play into the not deserving then?
Yeah, totally. I'm unworthy. I am unworthy. I am not enough. Those would be the beliefs. I am out of control. I am unworthy. I am not enough. I'm unlovable. So those limiting beliefs, if they're underneath this, we ultimately are going to be seeking points when we're feeling particularly low that validate that again. So absolutely, it's self-sabotage is a way of effectively revalidating the underlying limiting belief that we have. And even if we do have success, quite often those people won't celebrate it because they think it's just so short-lived. Or like, well, that was just luck, or this is just short-lived, or well, this is just a one-off and it'll go back to being something else, or just even can't even think about it, can't even stop and think about it because you believe you're unworthy of it. I was working with a client the other week who had a very, very difficult childhood, very deep poverty, would sit in the toilets during their lunch break because they couldn't afford lunch and couldn't bring a lunch, and so every single lunchtime would hide in the toilets so that other people wouldn't notice, every lunchtime for years. And then now have got quite a good business, quite successful. And I don't know about Australia at the moment, but the UK, everything's so expensive, especially things like organic fruit, right? It's insane. So expensive.
Like, sure.
Yeah, like I think the world is mad. But so
Yeah.
this client was saying, will now go out and tries to buy the best food for their children. So tries to buy like whole foods and make good choices. They won't eat the fruit. They won't eat the fruit that they buy from their own business. They don't feel worthy. Said, I don't feel worthy. I don't feel like I deserve it. I don't feel like I should have it.
Yeah. I understand that not deserving and unworthy and not enough. Those run deep in my core, I believe. And the moment that I could, so I owned a gym, and when I sold it, like I never saw it as successful. Like, even though outside people are like, it's so good, it's still alive, it did phenomenally, but I never saw it as successful. I couldn't see it. Like, just couldn't see what other people saw. And that probably relates to self as well. Like, what people see in me, didn't always see, still have trouble seeing what other people see.
Not celebrating success is a part of that. So even we need to stop and take stock, because we need to provide like our little inner critic, you know, the shoulds and the wants. We need to provide our inner critic with some evidence that things went well. So then when you're next coming to a challenge, whatever it may be, we need to bring up the dossier of evidence and go, well, hang on a second. Like, oh, you're going to do this, or people are going to laugh at you, or you're going to fail, or this will go wrong. We just, whoa. We sold that gym. We built that business, and that actually went pretty well. Like, we did that. And you'll hear it go, oh, okay. You're like, and do you know that time that we did tell that friend that actually we weren't available, and we're still friends, and that went well? And they're like, And then you go, and do you remember that time that we whatever, decided that actually we're going to undertake something that we hadn't done before, start a podcast and put myself out there that people may judge me. And actually, that went pretty well. We got some pretty cool people on and we had some big conversations. And I had some nice messages where people said it had really helped them. Do you remember that? And you'll hear it go, all right. And then it's just totally like lost its charge. That's what you have to do with the inner critic. You have to present it with evidence of times that you've done. And I'm not talking about doing like an ultra marathon or like, it can literally be that I said to a friend that I wasn't doing very well actually, and I told them the full truth of like, I'm fine. That is a massive thing, right? Really showing up. So that is why as well we have to anchor and celebrate our successes, even if it's just you doing a little thing that you want to do for yourself at home. Just like, I've got a nice candle. Like I do like what I call the turn down service at home. I live on my own with my kid, with my cat, classic spinster. And like, I classic divorce spinster, got a rescue cat, live with my daughter, but I do like, I will buy a nice candle for myself and I will sit of an evening when she's gone to bed, light that candle, the expensive one that I don't just save for guests, and sit down in my home and look out my garden and go, did good today, babe. Did good today. And that's it. Like, that's it. And that goes into my little bank of, I did a hard thing and it went well. Well done me. That's it. It doesn't need to be a champagne and all the rest of it. Great if you want to, but it can just be as simple as acknowledging. We have to take the time to acknowledge it, because otherwise all you've got is evidence of stuff going wrong. That's all you've got. So we do need to take stock of the things that you're doing well. And the other, you and I are doing something that I believe we're very aligned on, which is speaking very openly in honor of turning our pain into purpose and helping other people out of their pain. That's why I say what I say. I could be getting wildly criticized. I'm a therapist that used to self-harm. Like people, I've no doubt I do get criticized for stuff like that. But to me, it's way more important that someone else who's suffering and felt like I was at that time hears me say there's hope and it's okay, and I did this and you're not alone. I did a video on it. I put a video out. I was going for a facial and it wasn't a nice one. It was like one of the ones where it's like the big light and it was a stabby thing to obviously repair all the scarring. And I felt so vulnerable because someone is going to be right up here looking at the thing that I was the most ashamed of previously. And I had to heal my inside, obviously, before I could allow that to recover and then be in a place where I could go and get some help to do that. And Sadaf, who does who looks after me now, is just the most amazing human. And bless her, the first time I met her, she talked to me about something that she'd been doing and that she felt very ashamed of with her body. And that was amazing. And I felt so seen, because it's a very she beautiful clinic in Chelsea. And the last place you want to go, or you think, is somewhere. And then you have this and I put a video out about it. And the amount of responses that I had. And the interesting thing was the comments, mainly women. I do that. I burn my legs in the shower. I pick at this. I did, all of that. I had the same number, if not more, DMs from men. I do that. I thought I was going mad. I didn't know there was a name for it. Thank you so much for saying this. And so there's to me, shame has no room in my life anymore. I'm truly shameless, because I know that by me talking about this, I know that in the book, it's not just my story. It is memoir about all of these things. It's expert interviews, places that we're given shame that we shouldn't be, fertility. I've got a bariatric surgeon in there, body. I've got my divorce lawyer in there, how it's weaponized in a separation process, how the person that we say we're going to love, honor and obey suddenly becomes our biggest enemy, and they're going to betray us with the most intimate things that we've shared with one another. And he talks about that. I've got my own therapist in the book that I've waived my own right to anonymity for her to put her files in of when we first met, when I was self-harming, because I want that if anybody is listening to anything or reads anything in that book and they're on the precipice of getting help, you're worried what someone may think of you. That's what she thought of me. I've put it in there. And then there's my clients are in there. Well, my beautiful, brave, unbelievable clients have gone in with their real stories: sexual assault, eating disorders, addiction, abuse. There's the most real stories in there: grief, loss, betrayal, heartbreak, everything that I think we push down into our system because shame tells us that we can't authentically show up and talk about it. And I know for me, my life feels like it's been in two parts. There's one where I was shameful and I was full of shame. Now there's one that I'm shameless, and it's just given me complete freedom. And that's what I want for everybody.
How can I tell if I'm filled with shame?
I think, I think that we know. Shame is the thing. I say that, like, if we were 6 years ago and I was on this podcast with you, I would have my nails in my palms, digging in, willing you not to go near certain subjects. I'd be wishing that you didn't say my marriage was impaling at that time. I'd be willing you not to ask me about my marriage. And I'd be like, yes, great, thank you so much. Because that was the shame bubbling under that my perfect marriage was failing. So I was a failure. Like, you would maybe not want to talk about things that happened at school or how you felt there because you'd be so afraid of that shame being surfaced and people finding out that you were not great or whatever it is that this shame statement has had. I don't think we need help finding our shame. I think we need help removing it. I think we know what our shame is. I think we know when we're not enough. And I think it may not be the actual words we have for it, but we have that feeling of it. And shame is a felt sense. That's why it's quite tricky, because shame is not it's different to anxiety, which is the racing thoughts, or the inner critic, which is the narrative it gives you, your where you maybe it's telling you that you're wrong. But shame is a feeling. I use this example quite a lot, but my daughter's upstairs right now. And I could be like, oh, babe, I feel like a bit crap today. Like, I really shouldn't have got her on the one-eyed nanny on the iPad while I'm doing this with you. I should have her outside doing activities or plan loads of stuff. Like, I feel a bit crap today. Not great mumming. That's guilt. If I said to you all the same things and I went, I am a bad mother. Like, I feel actually unwell. Like, that nauseous feeling saying that to you. And I know I'm not a bad mother. That's an example. But that's shame. I am bad. I'm a bad girl. I am stupid and wrong. I am unworthy. I am not enough. That's shame. We know we're ashamed of our shame.
Yeah, and it's like we try and hide it, right? It's like the
Of
elephant in
course.
the room. Actually, no, I wouldn't class it as the elephant. It's like I class it as the Peter Pan shadow. The thing
Yes,
we try to
yes.
hide, but will always be there.
I
And
love that you said that. Yeah.
yeah, it's the Peter Pan shadow.
There's a quote from Carl Jung that I put in my book, and I'm probably going to get it slightly wrong. Apologies, but it's a wise man that keeps his shadow out in front so that it can never take you down from behind. And that's
Oh,
what I think shame is. Yeah.
oh shit.
That's the difference in shameful and shameless. You keep it
Mhm.
all out in front so that it can never, ever. Because otherwise, you're trying to outrun your own shame. We're trying to constantly mask, squish, be perfect enough, people please, have no boundaries, whatever it might show up as, so that you'd never get near my shame. So you never see that shadow behind me. Well, guess what? All of mine's in front. Read it, look at it, hear us talk. Like, there is no shame. I have no shame. I have no shame at all.
It's like I'm gonna try and describe it from how I see this now. It's like trying to create a smoke and mirror. So it's like, let me perform, or let me paint this picture so you don't get to see what's actually over here.
Absolutely. And we don't do it in a Machiavelli way. I don't think a lot. Obviously, there's narcissism. I've also got that in the book. That's a separate thing. But for most of us, we do it because we just think it's so awful. And I don't want you to see that. And I don't want you to suffer with my shame because it's so disgusting. If I think I'm so bad, like, I don't want you to see that or have to deal with that. So instead, I'm going to try and be really perfect, or put a mask on it, and, all of these things. So that is absolutely the smoke and mirror. I'm going to try and perform in all these different roles and spaces and places because fundamentally I want to keep you away from my shame. And it's not because I'm trying to control you or manipulate you, it's because I'm so ashamed of my shame. And my shame is telling me I'm the only one. So I can't possibly talk about it because I'm the only one that feels like this. I'm the only one. You're the only one that was too stupid at school. No one else felt like that. That's what your shame wants you to believe, that there was something wrong with you and that you were the only one. And if you think that, it keeps you isolated. Like I say in the book, shame is the last bastion of the patriarchy. And I believe that because I believe that it's designed to keep us separate from one another. Because if we really had all of our shame out there and then, we're all connected, there's nothing stopping us. Nothing.
Yeah, because we're all essentially one if you believe in the logic of mirroring and whatnot.
Yep.
So we're all in some capacity one, and we all function as one, but it's our own inner projections and everything else that makes me think that I'm different to you, but really it's just
Yep.
a reflection of me. And yeah,
Yep.
makes all the sense in the world.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, I love it.
Like,
I love it.
all,
It's weird to say I love it, but I love the like, the
no,
shame work
like,
now is just the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done. And yeah, when you start, all I can say is when you start getting out your shame, you can't stop. Like one of the people in the book who trigger warning, probably needs trigger warning this whole episode, but it's a very, very honest account of sexual assault when she was 10 by a teacher. And she writes so openly. It's actually like the notes from the client session, but she and I have had an interview as well, exactly what we went through, exactly the chain of events, how her mother then continued to humiliate her afterwards. So she was 10 at the time of the assault, and then her mother, if she'd been naughty, would strip her and her sister naked and put her out on the street for neighbours and cars to drive past. This is after being sexually assaulted, and her mother knew. I mean, it's just insane, like just the level of cruelty.
yeah.
But she writes about how she didn't tell anyone for 40 years. I was the first person she told in a session, and we worked through it all. And she says she has to stop herself saying it at cocktail parties now because she's so shame free, and it weighed on her so heavily that
Like
for
on
so many years
trauma.
she's like, yeah, she said, I have to remember that it's not appropriate. Like, hi, how are you? Oh, I'm amazing. I've like got rid of all my shame. Yeah, she has to sort of stop, oh, no, that's not the thing to say right now. Because that is, and I'm not being glib, because people that are experiencing that and going through that is a huge thing. And it was huge
Yeah.
in her life. And reading the account is amazing. And she gives some beautiful words of advice for someone that is experiencing that in the moment, and how even just to start admitting it to yourself that this thing did happen to me and I did not deserve it, even doing it in the mirror or just alone by yourself. She gives some unbelievable advice about it. But yeah, that is the power that shame has on you to repress you, keep you disconnected and dimmed, and like there's something wrong with you. And then also the freedom that you gain when all of that shame is removed. If you imagine all of that weight of shame is out and everything instead is self-compassion, and the freedom you get from that and living your life free of shame, it's all I can tell you is it's like, yeah, suddenly that the color goes on. Everything's possible.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not sure if you said this earlier. How do I know the difference between guilt and shame?
Okay, so guilt is more past based, coulda, woulda, shoulda, generally. So, oh,
Yeah.
why did I do that? Why didn't I say that? Then the I am is the shame. So, oh, why
Mm.
didn't I say that? Because I am wrong. Or why didn't I do that? Because I am weak. Or why did I not say no to that party invite? Because I am pathetic. Shame's the I am. Whereas the guilt is generally speaking a thing you feel. The guilt is generally a thing you either did or did not do. Shame is the thing you believe you are.
Oh,
That's the difference.
interesting. So then, does it feel? Here we go. Does it feel different in the body?
Yes, very much. Shame is this felt sense. Like I say, it's more of a. Well, I mean, if I ask you to go back to a time at school that you felt, maybe you were in the classroom that you couldn't do something, and that I am wrong, would that be right? Or I'm not sure what your I am is for that time.
Well, yeah. Stupid would probably be.
Okay, so if you get into a time at school and I am stupid,
Mm.
where do you feel that?
Honestly, it just makes me feel real contracted, and
Yeah,
like it makes me feel contracted almost all of my body, where I
yeah,
just want to make myself small.
yeah. And then if I asked you just to tell me about a situation where guilty, like you did something that you wish you
Mm.
hadn't, or you didn't show up for yourself in the right way.
Yeah. It's like a sadness feeling.
Yeah, and probably a bit more noisy around here is what I'm thinking. It's a bit more like, oh, you're running through the events a bit more.
Yeah, like thinking about how I could have said something better, or how I
Yeah,
didn't do something, or maybe
yeah,
I could have been better. Like trying to
yeah.
rearrange the series of events.
So guilt actually, interestingly, is also a symptom of anxiety. So anxiety can be defined as the inability to access the present. So if we're coulda, woulda, shouldaing into guilt,
Mm.
that's more
Yeah.
past based, but we're
Yeah.
still running through scenarios. We're not present. And then
Yeah.
the other sort of more, I don't know, widely thought of sense of anxiety is catastrophizing over the future. What if, what if, what if, what if, what will I do? What if? But either way, you're being pulled out of the present moment. So that's a way of looking at both of those. But it's generally more noise up here. It may be a bit of, like depending on how you respond to stress. But shame, oh, like you said, it was a complete, like, it's almost like you had a contraction. It's almost like you froze in the moment,
Yeah.
remembering that shame, almost going back into that. It's a, You know when it's shame. I'll tell you another way, like, you know, when you have a moment that the floor falls away from underneath you, and suddenly, let's just say you've had like a betrayal,
Mm.
and like maybe a friendship or a romantic or family or work or whatever, and you suddenly, all those things that logged in your mind, it's like goes chung chung chung, you remember them all, you remember where you were, the moments that you went,
Yeah.
I wonder, and we just carried on or whatever, and then the floor goes and it's like, what, like,
Yeah, it's like a stomach thing.
how could I have been so stupid? How could
Mm.
I am stupid, how could I have missed those signs? What's wrong with me that they chose to do that to me? Shame.
It's very interesting. And I find this very interesting because up until this moment, I had not identified shame.
Oh
Like,
wow.
not even thought to be in my emotions wheel. Like let's call it. I'm 32. I had never felt an emotion until I was 31.
Wow.
Um, I could tell you what happy was like, and I could tell you what sad was, but like logically, I could tell you.
Hmm.
In the body, no idea. Um, so I also identified as a person who was not angry, which is
Okay,
not
right.
true, which
Okay.
is, Um, so discovering what feelings were and how they felt in my body was like this very crazy thing to do in like the past year. So I would not even have thought that shame was also something in there.
And it's so somatic. You're with the, I'm guessing you're going through a process of like going through body experiences now and experiencing emotion. Shame is such a somatic experience. It is that felt sense. It is this deep I am. And so when you're doing whatever practices you might be doing, like say you're just out on a walk or exercise, whatever it is you're doing, you can become really aware of where it's showing up. And that contraction that you said when you felt shame, that would be keeping you away from your emotions as well. It would have been in its mind, it's keeping you safe from either disappointment, hurt, violence, anything,
Everything, yeah.
judgment. So just close down, just dissociate, just stop. Then nothing can get me either way. But obviously you're not having the extremes of joy either, or anything in between. So, yeah, I'm excited for you as
Thank
someone
you.
that's sort of 12 years down the line the other way, for you to be getting this shame out, because when it's like I say, when it's gone, it's gone. You know, you pull shame out by the root, you replace, and it's immediately replaced with self-compassion. Life is different.
Yeah, I have moments of self-compassion, but it's the single thing that I struggle the most with.
Mm.
Um, for a long time, I couldn't even hold it for other people because I didn't have it for me. Why would I have it for you?
Yeah,
And it was almost like not a stage of apathy for somebody, but definitely it was like, get your shit together. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to hear your problems. I don't want to hear you complain about it. Just get your shit together and get on with your life type of thing. So it was very cold and disconnected.
Yeah, this is so interesting for me, because this is such, we're so similar. Because
I know.
like
Like
I'm,
as you're talking, I'm like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
I don't think I cried until I was like in my mid 30s, because I was so armored, like I say, with protecting myself. And I know I come off quite cold. I've also got Scorpio rising. So like, but I know I come off like, I can come off quite cold. And I actually,
Yeah.
with my boyfriend, I remember on like our first sort of, you know, we had a couple of coffees and stuff, and our first like night out, and I was really nervous. I can be quite shy. And I said to him, look, I know that I might come off as a little bit cold. Just an hour and a margarita, and like, you know, I'm a bit shy. I'm a bit nervous at the moment. Just, I know this might be a bit cold, and because I'm aware of it now. But yeah, I would just, the only way to keep me safe, and I have so much compassion for that version of myself now. I have so much compassion for that girl that thought that the only thing she could do was become so hardened on the outside, because I've always been so soft. I am really nurturing. I'm so caring. You are, I can see it, but I didn't know how to cope because I thought I was bad and wrong. So I just placed this armor around myself as a way to try and even hide my vulnerability down. And yeah, I've had to get now I'll cry at the drop of a hat with stuff. Like, and it's good. I know, I say to my daughter, look, if you're crying, it's good. It's a stress response. It's coming out. It's fine. And I try and do it without, and I don't say sorry now if I'm going to burst into tears, or try not to. And I certainly say to her as well, like, all emotions are so welcome here. But it's the biggest piece of work that I have had to do is, and honestly, it still is probably like muscle memory for me to go back into like the masculine and be a bit harder. It's almost like, and I don't use this lightly at all, but it's almost like a recovery process for me, that I have to actively remind myself to stay in my vulnerability, to stay really open. That is the biggest piece of work that I've done, is like taking this armor off and getting into my vulnerability and just being, totally okay having really open emotions, rather than being hardened and like seeming coming off cold or a bit distant. And like I wasn't being cruel to people, but I couldn't cope. I didn't have any, also didn't want people anywhere near my shame. So, come on, let's get on with it. I don't want to be too close to messy emotions. I don't want to be too close to anything difficult, because I'm holding all of this in like this. And if I'm too close to yours, like there, I'm just, it's about to spill out.
Yeah, it's like I didn't. People couldn't cry in front of me, or if they did, it was just like, "What are we doing here?"
There.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I had nothing for you, and I definitely wasn't going to comfort you when you're crying. It was just like, you deal with whatever you're doing, and I'm gonna go over here.
Yeah.
It was just, yeah, like the level of disconnection I had to my emotions. On one hand, I think it's like a skill that's helped me throughout my life
Yeah.
to be able to flick that light switch of emotions on and off. Um, on the other hand, not so much.
Agree. Yeah, it's the biggest. I would encourage any person at all, if you feel, like I say, it's been a huge piece of my work, leaning into being vulnerable, and it's like a daily practice to remind myself of that. And life is better on that side as well, like, rather than trying to keep it all in and all down. And ultimately the body keeping the score.
Was there ever a moment that it nearly won? Like shame nearly won?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Coming towards the end of my marriage, when I knew, nobody's fault, but I just knew that wasn't going to be the right container for both of us, really. And then there's this sense of, but what, anxiety, really, and shame, like, going back to, well, what are you going to do? And, I'm no contact with my parents for obvious reasons. I was very close to my
Yeah.
in-laws. I was going to lose, not, that we all get on fine, but respectfully, that's my ex's family, so there has to be a little bit of distance there. And what's going to happen to you? And shame, I can remember being so anxious, and shame being like, where are you going to live, and how are you going to cope, and you can't manage these things, and a house and money, and you don't know how to do any of these things. Despite having an MBA in economics, I failed my maths GCSE, and so I still had this like idea that I wasn't very clever, in certain areas, and I wouldn't be able to cope with certain things, and I'd avoided them. I'd avoided doing certain things. And it's amazing how. And also, again, holding the lens of, you're not in the best place mentally when your marriage is imploding. Like, things have been a bit shit for quite a while, So, like, you're obviously not, you're not like, I'm really resilient, I'm going to like look at this now. Like, you're looking at this from a lens of deep hurt and upset and fear. And so, yeah, absolutely, shame nearly won. And, again, for anyone in that position, I chose. I went on every course you can imagine. Again, this is all in the book, from like female sexuality courses to you name it, counseling, everything. And in doing, because I was looking for something that would save my marriage, and I didn't find it. But what I did find was myself, and my whole self. And when I found her, she could not be in that relationship. And that's
Yeah.
no one's fault. Like, but having found
Totally.
that, yeah, and having found that full sense of myself, that was the thing that kind of gave me the courage to, again, just, all roads lead back to just like facing your shit, finding out what your shame is, getting that shadow out in front of you, and going, right, okay, this is where we are, this is who I am. And this is how, we don't have all the answers. I don't even have a fucking map, but I've got a compass, and I've got one step, and that's enough, and that has to be enough.
What does unapologetic living mean to you now?
So it means not apologizing for my own essence, for my authenticity, for my true self. It means having my shame fully out there, and being able to have a conversation like this with you, unscripted, which I loved. And we said off air, I was like, good, I don't want to have any plan. It's about not being afraid of anything that may be raised or you asking me. It's about being able to be vulnerable. It doesn't have to be like aggressive, and people be like, oh, like I'm not like that. I'm soft. I'm so soft. I'm really soft-hearted. I'm a very soft-hearted person. But I've learned to lean into my soft power and reclaim all of that back and just do it my way. I'm the sum of many parts. I'll geek out on leadership. I'll dress in, lingerie and wear it on a night out. I'm an amazing mum and do arts and crafts. I'm so many different things in different areas of my life. And that's what being unapologetic is. I don't need to fit in. And Brene Brown says that fitting in is the opposite of belonging. And it's so true. So being unapologetic is knowing that by me being my fullest self and my true self, that's where I find my community. That's where I find my belonging. And it's also led me to my soulmate and the best relationship that I've ever had. And I could never have had this had I not have gone through this process of becoming unapologetically myself.
I really like that a lot. And I agree with you. Every road that we take, we still have to come back to self. And it just takes that work for us to do it.
Completely. Yeah. And you either do it, like I say, and it's never too late is everything I want to say. I have a few people being like, oh, but I'm in my 50s or in my 60s, or is it too late for me? No.
No, never.
Never.
If everybody listening could release one layer of shame, how could they start?
So one of the ways to do it is, if the things that we've talked about are resonating, is to, as I nearly said her name, like as the wonderful client in the book says, is just to do it alone or do it in the mirror and just say it out loud, just admit it to yourself. And then also say, and I didn't deserve it, whatever it may be, and not to belittle anything. Maybe you've heard us talk about things that we talked about and you think, well, mine wasn't that bad. Don't minimize it. Shame wins again if you minimize. Yeah. Your shame isn't bad enough. Yes, it is. Like, that's another thing. Like, don't minimize. Whatever you're feeling, whatever is resonating, sit in the car, sit by yourself, be in a mirror if that works for you. Do it in practice, do it on a mat. However, do it in nature. Find a moment and just stand there, take a breath, take that pause. This thing happened to me and I did not deserve it.
Annalie, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure and definitely an eye-opener for me. So I hope that the person listening to this gets something from it as well.
I sense they will. Thank you for being so open and generous with yourself and you today. I love this conversation.
Thank you so much.